Picture a man found on a winter morning, stiff and half frozen, an arm's length from a fire that had burned down to coals through the night. His chest and his boots were scorched. His back was gray with frost. The fire had not gone out. The fire had been too close, and closeness was the thing that nearly killed him. We think warmth is simple. We think you get cold, so you get closer to the heat, and the closer you get, the safer you are. But the men who live their whole lives in the deep cold of the Rocky Mountains learned something harder than that, and they learned it because getting it wrong left men dead in their bedrolls with a good fire still glowing beside them. My name is John Woods, and I want to tell you why the mountain men, the ones who wintered in country that would kill a soft man in a single night, learned to lay their beds back from the flames instead of up against them, and why that gap of cold ground between a sleeping man and his fire was not laziness or bad luck, but the most deliberate choice he made all night. Because a fire does not reach as far as it looks like it reaches. It throws a wide glow and a lot of light, and the light lies. The real, usable heat, the heat that keeps a man alive until dawn, lives in a narrow band, and past the edge of that band, there is almost nothing. The mountain man learned where that edge was. He learned to find the short bed. And everything he did after dark was built around a line most people never even know is there. Part 1. The short bed. Here's the first thing the mountain man understood that we have forgotten. A fire has a reach, and that reach is shorter than the glow that surrounds it. The light from a fire spills out in every direction and fools the eye. A man can stand well back, see the flames clearly, feel like he is inside the warmth, and still be losing heat the whole time. Because the heat that actually warms a body does not travel the way the light does. It comes off the fire in straight lines, and it fades fast with distance. Step too far back, and the glow still reaches your eyes, while the warmth no longer reaches your skin. Step too close, and you cross into a different kind of danger. There is only a narrow strip of ground where the heat is real and steady and kind, and the mountain man learned to read for that strip the way another man reads a map. He called for it with his body. He would lie down, feel the heat on him, and shift until it sat even and gentle across him, not scorching and not fading. That was the short bed. Too close, and the fire dried him out and cooked one part of him while it worked. Too far, and he might as well have had no fire at all. The whole craft was finding the line between and holding it. And the reason too close was so dangerous starts with something strange about the cold. When a man is chilled to the bone and finally reaches heat, his skin goes numb before it goes warm. Numb skin cannot feel itself burning. This is why the old wisdom warns so hard against warming a frozen hand or a frozen foot straight over a flame. The man cannot feel the damage being done. He only smells it later, or sees the blister in the morning, or worse, feels nothing at all because the nerves are already gone. A mountain man who crawled right up against his fire to chase the cold out of his hands could lose those hands to the very heat he was reaching for. And there was a second half to reading that edge, because the short bed had a back as well as a front. The heat that came off the fire kept going once it passed the sleeping man, out into the dark, where it did no one any good. So the mountain man learned to put something behind himself to turn that wasted heat around. A wall of stacked logs, a slab of rock, a rise in the ground, even the packed snow itself, thrown up into a low bank. Anything solid set on the far side of the bed would catch the warmth that would otherwise pour off into the night and send a little of it back toward him. It widened the short bed. It made the narrow band of real heat a touch broader and a touch kinder. And it let the mountain man lie a little farther from the flame and still stay warm, which, as the rest of the night would prove, was exactly where he wanted to be. So the mountain man kept his distance on purpose. Not because he did not want the warmth, because he understood the warmth had a shape and a wrong edge and a price for crossing it. He found the short bed, he backed it with a wall, and he stayed on it. But finding the right distance was only the first part of what the fire was hiding. Because even a man who lay exactly right, warm, and even and safe from the flame, could still wake in the dark hours, soaked and freezing, betrayed by his own heat. Part 2. The Sweat That Turns. This is the part the mountain man could not afford to get wrong, because this is the part that killed quietly. When a man lies too close to a fire, he sweats. It feels good at first. The heat soaks in, the muscles loosen, and the body, doing what a body does, opens its pores and begins to damp the skin. In a warm cabin, that is nothing. In deep cold, out in the open, with one set of clothes and no way to dry them, that sweat is the beginning of a death sentence, and the mountain man knew it. Here is the mechanism, in plain words. Cloth keeps a man warm because of the still air trapped inside its fibers. Dry wool, dry hide, dry blanket, all of it works by holding a layer of motionless air against the body. Soak that cloth, and the water drives the air out. Now the layer that was holding heat in starts pulling heat out, because water carries warmth away from a body far faster than air ever could. Some say wet cloth can pull heat from a man roughly 25 times faster than dry cloth. Whether the number is exact or not, every man who has ever been wet and cold knows the feeling in his bones. The layer that was your friend at sundown becomes a cold, clinging enemy by the middle of the night, and it turns at the worst possible moment. The man crowds the fire, sweats into his layers, and drifts off warm. Then the fire burns down, as every fire does. The heat that was drying his front fades. The damp in his clothes goes cold. And now he is lying in wet cloth in falling temperature with no fire strong enough to save him. And he wakes at 3 a.m, shaking, and does not always understand why. So the mountain man did 2 things. First, he kept back to the short bed, close enough for gentle warmth, far enough that he never roasted and never soaked. Second, he chose his layers for what they did when they got damp anyway. He trusted wool, not because wool was soft, because it usually was not, but because wool holds its warmth, even when it is damp, where other cloth quits the moment it gets wet. Cotton was death in that country. Cotton drinks water, holds many times its own weight in it, and once soaked, it stops insulating entirely and turns into a cold compress laid against the skin. The mountain man wanted wool between himself and the night, and he wanted it dry, and he laid his bed at the exact distance that would keep it that way. The common mistake was simple, and it was deadly. Crowd the fire to feel warm right now. Soak the one layer standing between you and the cold. Pay for it in the dark when the fire is low and the damp has turned to ice against your chest. The mountain man traded the quick comfort of the close fire for the slow, dry safety of the short bed every single night. But distance and dry wool still left one thing lying between the mountain man and the freezing dark. One irreplaceable thing, and the fire, for all it gave him, spent the whole night trying to eat it. Part 3. The Burning Gift. Here is the thing almost nobody thinks about, the danger even a careful man can miss, and it is not the cold at all. It is what the fire does to a man's gear while he sleeps. A fire is never still. It pops, it throws sparks, it lifts embers up on the hot air and scatters them out across the ground all night long without pause. Every one of those embers is looking for something to land on. And what the sleeping man has laid out around him, close to the warmth, is the one thing keeping him alive. His blanket. His robe. The single layer he cannot replace. Think about what that layer meant to him. The mountain man was not carrying a spare. He might have one good wool blanket or a buffalo robe that weighed as much as a small dog, and that was the whole of it. There was no replacement waiting 1,000 miles back in some warehouse. If that blanket burned, he did not go cold for a night. He went cold for the rest of the winter, which in that country often meant he did not see spring. The blanket was not comfort. The blanket was his life, laid out on the ground beside a machine that spat fire all night. And this is where the old choice of wool turns out to be even wiser than it looked. Wool does not catch the way other things catch. It needs more oxygen to burn than the open air around it can give. So instead of flaring up, wool chars, smolders for a breath, and puts itself out. An ember can land on a good wool blanket, sit there glowing for a few seconds, and be brushed away, leaving barely a mark. That is not a small thing. That is the difference between a scorch and a hole, and out there a hole in your only blanket was a wound that did not heal. Put a modern sleeping bag in that same spot, and the story ends differently. The man-made stuffing melts. A single ember drops on it and opens a hole in an instant, and the melted fiber sticks and keeps burning, because that is what those materials do. The mountain man's wool shrugged off the same ember that would have ruined a modern bag. But even wool has a limit. Crowded against the fire night after night, takes spark after spark, and even wool thins and scorches and weakens. So the mountain man kept it back. He kept the fire at the edge of its reach, on the far side of that gap of cold ground, precisely so the sparks fell short of the one thing he could not lose. And now the whole shape of it comes clear. The close fire does not kill a man with a dramatic blaze. It kills him slowly, patiently, by roasting one side of him while the other freezes, by soaking the wool that was meant to save him, and by eating his blanket a single spark at a time until there is nothing left between his skin and the deep cold. The fire that feels like safety is the fire doing all three at once. The mountain man survived because he understood that a gift can burn, and he held it at arm's length so it could warm him without consuming him. Part 4. The distance he kept. We treat warmth as something to grab. We turn the dial up, we crowd the vent, we pull the heat closer, and we call that comfort. Everything in us, when we are cold, says close the gap, get nearer, more is better, and nearest is best. The mountain man knew the opposite, and he knew it because the mountains had taught him with a hard hand. He understood that warmth in deep cold is not something you seize. It is something you manage from a careful distance with a steady eye on the moisture in your layers and the one blanket at your back. His instinct was not to close the gap. His whole discipline was to hold it. That empty arm's length of frozen ground between the sleeping man and the flames was not neglect. It was knowledge. It was everything he had learned about the short reach of a fire, the turning of sweat to ice, and the slow hunger of an open flame for a man's only blanket. All of it compressed into one quiet decision about exactly where to lie down. That is the thing they understood that we forgot. Not a trick, not a secret method. A relationship with the cold that started from respect instead of appetite. We assume the thing that comforts us is the thing that keeps us safe, and we pull it as close as it will come. The mountain man learned out where the lesson cost everything, that the near thing which comforts you can be the very thing that kills you, and that survival is often nothing more than the patience to keep it at the right distance. The fire was never his enemy, and it was never simply his friend. It was both at once, generous and dangerous, in the same breath, and the entire craft of the mountain man was living in the narrow space between those two faces of it. He found that space, night after freezing night, and he laid his bed along its edge. So the next time you picture a man asleep in the snow, with the fire close enough to touch, know that the one who saw morning was the one who left a gap. A cold, empty stretch of ground between himself and the flames, kept there on purpose, by a man who understood exactly what he was doing. I am John Woods. If you want more of what the mountain men knew, and the rest of us forgot, subscribe, and I will see you next time.